So I'm hoping you heard the story up until now, but I got FedEx to hand sort through a package, a container. They had made a mistake, something was supposed to be delivered on Saturday morning, and they put it out for Monday. I spent hours on the phone. I got them to send a team in to hand sort a container, to find my package, put it on a plane to Chicago. I got the short run house to work the graveyard shift. They worked 12 midnight until 8 in the morning. They made 6 flat samples. They drove it 100 miles to the factory on Sunday. I got the plant manager to come in on a Sunday and make 1 good can. They drove it back to Chicago, and Monday morning it was in the customer's booth. I never told the customer what happened, but to me that was a wow, and that's like a do or die approach. So for those of you just joining, I was just sharing one approach to creating more customer wows is taking a do or die approach. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see you all today. Our subject today is creating more customer wows to earn the right to bold behavior. That's our subject today. Hang on a second. So bolder behaviors are often payment in kinds, and they're a payoff to the wow. So I want to talk about, here are some of the things you could harvest if you do great wows. You can get inside information needed for the economic justification, including our share of the business. Now, why is this important? You'll often have a salesperson who will say, I have a great relationship with this person or that person, which could mean they have a good social relationship. But can they get the kind of decision-making information they need to do the economic justification? So in the world of urgency-based selling, if you have a good relationship, a great relationship, one of the measures of this is you can get this information to do your economic justification. Another example of a bold behavior is escalating to a higher level decision maker when the buyer is inappropriate. On a level playing field, we push to get and win the assignment that everybody can supply. How often, again, you need wows for this usually, how often is our pricing above the lowest acceptable level? So what that means is sometimes a salesperson has a range, right? They have to come in at a price between $1 and $1.05. How often is it $1.05 and how often is it $1? What's the ratio? Using the voice of moral authority, where we tell the customer what to do. How often do you go to a customer and say to a customer, here's what you need to do? Now, this is very important in selling as a method to solve the innovator's dilemma. The innovator's dilemma, coming from a book by that title by Christensen, is in a time of change, if all you do is a classic marketing approach, that is, find out what the customer needs and do it. If that's all you do, that's a formula for bankruptcy. We have to lead the customer, and in order to lead them, we have to create wows. Pattern interrupters. I'm surprised to hear you say that. You're now all okay. It's okay when the prospect says something crazy. It's okay to say, I'm surprised to hear you say that. Like if they say, I'm good, or your price is too high, or what have you. I'm surprised to hear you say that. And what needs to follow is a wow statement. Asking for getting our fair share of business, the half idea principle. So what's the half idea principle? If you're in a very competitive milieu, when you bring in an idea to a prospect, sometimes, unfortunately, they shop it to the incumbent vendor. So we got to ask for fairness in front and say, if I teach you something new, are you going to do it with me? And you need a wow to get to that point. Getting the extra item above an initial placement. So I have a client, for instance, that has 1,000 items in the warehouse. Customer calls for just one item, but they could buy many more. How many times do you get the upsell? And earning the right to longer meetings. So there's elective and non-elective stops. Non-elective stop. The president of your company calls everybody into a meeting. You can't avoid that meeting and say, hey, I'm meeting with Andy or whoever, like you'll get fired. elective stop. You got nothing scheduled right after, or the buyer has nothing scheduled. So think about how many times do you have a half hour, 1 hour meeting that goes to 2 or 3 hours? That was an elective stop. What percentage of your meetings, when you need them to go longer, do they go longer? All these are pretty much examples of PIKs, payments in kind, behaviors the buyer does to advance the selling process, and they're typically dependent on WOWS. So we need WOWS to earn the right to mold the behavior and to open and close more profitable opportunities. That's why we need WOWS. By the way, if you have any questions as we go forward, I'm going to cover a lot in 15, 20 minutes. Email me at andyg@urgencybasedselling.net. I'll get back to you if I can during the webinar afterwards. So are you ready for an exciting webinar? If you are, my advice to you is fasten your mental seatbelts and prepare for yourself for yet another plunge into the world of urgency-based selling. The central paradox in selling, the central paradox, urgency versus neediness. WOWs are important to resolve this central paradox. If you don't, you see that wolf pictured on the right side of the screen, they're going to rip your throat out and it's going to be a commodity buy. So let's talk about what is this paradox. The prospect wants us to act with a sense of urgency. So if a prospect calls us, they want us to jump in there. But when we do act with a sense of urgency, too many prospects think that we're needy and they hang us out to dry and maybe they can get a fire sale. WOWs are one of your critical tools to deal with this paradox. Let's take a quick diversion into neurotransmitters and selling. There are two key neurotransmitters when it comes to selling, dopamine and norepinephrine. Dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter. Our WOWs activate dopamine, which create FOMO, fear of missing out. And because we create FOMO, we can activate norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is the fight or flight neurotransmitter, and the way we enforce it is with PIKs. So with WOWs, we earn the right to PIKs, but if we activate the dopamine only and not the norepinephrine, it leads to fire sales. We don't want fire sales. Now, to help you build the courage to ask for PIKs, here's a little tip. Make enough effort. So for every dollar that you need to close, have 5 good dollars in your pipeline. And how do you know it's good? You got PIKs. And this will provide you with the courage to start asking for more and stronger PIKs. The rule of thumb is this. Prepare in advance of every sales interaction. What is the PIK you want out of it? And then ask for the strongest PIK to which you've earned the right. A WOW story. What are your WOW stories that you tell to prospects and customers? Here's a WOW story. Everybody loves a parade, especially the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, right? So each year a client, Hudson Awning, creates special awnings that go on the Macy's flagship store. Here's the artwork one year. Here's the artwork we created. You see, this is what you see on TV. Now, Macy's loved these awnings, but there was a problem. Here was the problem. NBC, who did the telecast, they didn't love it. 1 week before the parade, NBC came back and said, I don't like this. Now, normally this is 4 weeks lead time to create these awnings, but we didn't have 4 weeks. So we got new artwork. We turned it around in a week. You may have seen historically this artwork, and everybody's happy. Macy's and NBC. The punchline is, you can believe in our company, Hudson Awning, we take care of you. That's a WOW story, right? That was WOW. So are you doing a good job of dramatizing your WOW stories, the before and afters? Here's one possible takeaway. Now, to achieve WOW status, we typically need to identify and address a hot button issue for the prospect. This will cause them to share a problem, and then we can do a WOW at that point. So how do we smoke out the hot button? Our experience is really important. I have found in a first conversation, within 3 to 5 minutes, I could do everything you're seeing on the screen, which includes establish competence as a consultant and authenticity. I've been doing this 29 years. I've worked with over 160 clients. Typically, we have at least a 15 to 20% bump in sales. So when I talk about my background, I'll say, here are some common challenges customers face when they bring us in. Their current vendor is not responsive. They have the following quality problems. They're not innovative enough. They're not customer focused enough. I'm hoping you don't have these problems. This whole intro script can be 3 to 5 minutes. You talk a little bit about what you've done, and then you talk about why people bring you in, and this will set up your wow. Another thing it sets up is it helps us move upstream to becoming a trusted advisor. If you look at the screen, you see a scenario where the competitor is the trusted advisor, and they're like upstream, upfield on a soccer, and the ball is running downfield, and we have to kick the ball upfield, and it's like an impossible scenario. So when we use WOWS, it helps level the playing field towards helping us become a trusted advisor, which is what we want. So how do we recognize a wow? Here are some of the tips that we're getting wows. The body language, the customer leans forward. It shows in the customer's face there's a show of excitement. There are words of approval, amazement. Wow, that's excellent, sensational, that's amazing. Sometimes they even say, wow. I was in a meeting once with a client where we got 8 wows in the meeting. And perhaps most importantly, the customer suggests the follow-up action, the PIK. Now, wows are two-edged swords. No wows, probably you need to amp up your presentation. Not strong enough. But, oops, if you do get a wow, right? If you do go a wow, what did you harvest? What was the PIK you harvest from the wow? What was the PIK you harvest? Now, when you're focused on wows, you're always looking for not the nice to have, but what are the must-haves for the customer? Your North Star to guide you are the must-haves. Now, you put together your wow toolbox to bring out the wows. This is for a manufacturing company. Let's look at what's in the wow toolbox. Great diagnostic questions, risk mitigating strategies, fantastic testimonials from named companies that will be recognized, articles, educations, and perhaps as important as anything, strong messaging. We protect your brand in the marketplace. We protect your brand in the marketplace. Let's look at a breakthrough formula for the wow or for urgency. Let's look at a little breakthrough formula here. We need a compelling reason and proof for the skeptic. So I'm going to give you a case. We'll revisit this at the end, but we have IT problems, huge IT problems. The proof is the explanation of the testimonials, and that will move a conversation from safe to serious. How do you know when from safe to serious? Look at the PIKs. A safe conversation, you're never going to get a stick of business. Serious conversation, they have an urgent need and they're willing to discuss it with you. Serious doesn't mean you're closed. Serious means you're opened. So if you've made a breakthrough, which you measure by the PIK, the only question then is when do you want it? And that's your time element that brings it to urgency. Let's look at a case history now. Oh, why must we sell to urgencies with wows? In most of my experience, B2B selling, 3 to 12 month selling cycle, right? So from the time you say hello till you meet, till they buy. If you don't create urgency in the very first meeting, when they come into the market, 3 to 12 months later, they're going to make like a wolf. They're going to make a commodity buy. They're going to rip your throat out on price. Let's look at an example of building to urgency and the problem of the one-legged lead. So this is a B2B sale, and the problem is we need the approval of the absent partner. We only have one partner. What do you do? Let's take a look at the case. We're going to analyze the sales call just as in English you might have analyzed in grammar, how does a sentence constructed? And we're going to use as our reference your standard sales call. So there are 3 parts to the standard sales call. Steps 1 to 7, set up the serious conversation. 8 to 12 are your fact finding. And 13 to 18 is managing the opportunity, proving we meet the need, closing the sale. We're going to focus mostly on 1 to 7. So this is a case history in selling office technology, and the prospect is a title company. This is a picture in the center of the owner, and we did our research, and perhaps I'll cover that in another webinar, how do you do research, but we found out the core values of this customer. What were the core values of their business? Now, we sent as our next step our agenda in advance. Now, we recommend you send an agenda 100 out of 100 times and build some urgency in there and ask some tough questions like urgent needs, why and why now, and your basis for making a decision. Next is your bonding. We did core value alignment on their core values because we did our research, and since this was a technology sale, the prospect was wearing an Apple Watch, and we talked about the Apple Watch. Humility. Your strongest statement of humility is earning the right to the prospect's time. And I like the following formulation, which I offer you. My purpose today is that you will feel this was a good meeting, that you have takeaways, this is time well spent, you're glad you took the meeting. That's how I set up meetings. Your freebie, the free gift. So this is a company that's a title company. They want to meet realtors. And our wow here is we agreed to introduce them to a realtor. That sets up the splash, what we're known for. And we went over our warranty, our accountability, our dependability, and our customer satisfaction. Each step sets up the next step. Then in this step, we're starting to establish how we move mountains on behalf of the client. I'm going to skip right to the proving. We went through the questioning, we got good fact finding, and now we use a powerful testimonial. Now, a powerful testimonial has two components. It addresses an objection that usually causes prospects to hesitate, and it has the before and after picture. So I just want to highlight within this letter these wow statements. At first, we weren't interested. We thought it wasn't broke. You showed it was broke. My advice to anyone resisting a great offer because they think they're good is talk to Watson. He'll show you how to make it better. So good testimonials, two qualities. Number one, it addresses a typical objection. And number two, before and after questions, before and after picture. Now we're at the end of the meeting, and the one partner who was there said, this is a done deal. I just have to talk to my partner. You know, you should be hearing back from me shortly. However, the days were passing. We didn't get the purchase order. We're beginning to wonder, is Dave, the salesperson, trapped in the purgatory of call me back in 2 weeks? How would you handle this? What would you do? Now, when we're teaching, we typically prepare and show a story like this, and then we discuss it. We discuss it. We go for the power of the wisdom in the room. In fact, you might want to bring this back. Typical answers would be, well, try to talk to the other partner. But the problem is the other partner is not available. So what do? How about the Columbo move? If you've seen Columbo, the TV detective, one more thing. So I coached Dave, the salesperson, call him up on the phone, call the prospect, and do what I'm saying. So he calls the prospect and says, you could hear the prospect was standoffish and saying, you know, how can I help you? And he said, well, you know, you said as soon as you talk to your partner, you're going to go ahead and we're going to book this deal. Yeah, as soon as I talk to my partner. Well, if you don't mind, I forgot to ask you one question. This is the Columbo move. My marketing department asked me to ask you this question. Can I ask it? Oh, yeah, ask the question. What's the question? What are the 3 reasons you're going to recommend to your partner you want to go ahead? So there's silence. This is on speakerphone. Well, you had a great economic offer. You and your boss who came in are like salt of the earth. We loved you. And this is a technology sale. I'm not that familiar with it. And you made it so I could understand it. Wow, thank you. Goodbye. Hang up the phone. Next day, the owner calls us, the one owner, and says, come on by and pick up the purchase order. So what happened? It's more than likely we helped reacquaint the buyer with the decisions, why they were making that decision. And by the way, in this case, the seller, Dave, skipped a step at the end. He didn't do the buyer's remorse move, or technique, which I'm about to share with you. If you have a verbal and it's not in writing, you're at risk. And so when they get the verb, we always ask, what were the major reasons you're going ahead? Because you want to make sure they understand that it's a good reason. So this is recommended. The team learns from the team. Let's go back to the breakthrough formula for the WOW. The bold reason, the compelling reason, the problems we solve, the proving is the explanation, and the testimonials. That leads to a breakthrough. How do we know? We harvest PIKs. And then to get to the urgency, the question is, when do you want it? Now with WOWS, there's a pay me now or pay me later quality. You usually can't close unless you get a WOW. So no WOWs now mean big problems later in your selling process. Work for the WOW early on, front load the WOW. What did we cover today? More WOWs, more opportunities. Many forms of the WOW, body language, words. Not enough WOWs, you probably need a stronger presentation. With WOWs, what did you harvest? What were your PIKs? Develop a formula, a standard sales call for generating and harvesting WOWs. And it's pay me now or pay me later. Well, we're almost done with the presentation. We know Rome wasn't built in a day. Be thoughtful. Think about what, if anything, did you take away from today's presentation? Any questions? Give me a call, Andy G at urgencybasedselling.net. And join us next month on 7/19 for our new seminar, 7 Revolutionary Ideas You Could Change Your Selling on 7/19. Thanks for joining us. See you next month. Have a great month. Good selling. Bye now.